So recently, via a Freedom of Information request, we can now reveal the cost of Lucy Letby's trial. Now, interestingly, this doesn't just show the combined cost of what this trial cost overall. It's actually broken down into Lucy Letby's side and also the CPS and the prosecution's expenses. Take a listen to the following article. Lucy Letby racked up a nearly £1 million legal aid bill while on trial. Representatives for Lucy Letby received at least £980,000 in legal aid, the Ministry of Justice confirmed in response to a Freedom of Information request. Anyone facing a Crown Court trial is eligible for legal aid. However, applicants can be required to pay contributions up to the entire cost of the defence if they are convicted of at least one offence that they had been charged with. Legal aid was provided to Letby's representatives at both Crown Court and the police station, the Ministry of Justice has disclosed. A total of £975,000 was provided to her solicitor and barrister at Manchester Crown Court. Her solicitor at the police station received another £4,244. However, the total spend on Letby's case could increase after the legal aid agency receives receipts of all claims associated with her trial. But in situations involving ongoing proceedings, recent sentencing or appeals, further claims can be made until all lawyers involved have completed the billing process. Letby's legal aid expenses are in addition to the £2.5 million bill that the CPS ran up to jail her. The CPS, responding to the Freedom of Information request, said the figure accounts for counsel experts and presentational fees. Okay, so I'm just going to cut in here and share some of my thoughts on what I've read so far. So it would appear that Lucy Letby's defence costs come to around £975,000. I'm sure some people are going to be outraged at this. Why are we spending money for this, that and the other? My personal opinion is that regardless of cost, the most important thing here is that a fair trial is conducted, regardless of what someone has or hasn't done. Could you imagine if the prosecution had £2.5 million to spend and Lucy Letby had £50,000 or £100,000? What do you think would happen after a verdict is given? There'd be people saying, "Oh, this was a stitch up. This was a stitch up from the very start. The prosecution had all this money and this poor nurse who's earning peanuts basically couldn't defend herself." Now, I read a post a couple of days ago, very interesting post written by a barrister, and I don't know if this is true or not, but by all accounts, because of the legal aid and the situation concerning this case in particular, the complexity of it and the serious nature of this case, Lucy Letby would have been entitled to the same amount of funding as the prosecution. So maybe some people are going to say, well, why have the prosecution spent £2.5 million and Lucy Letby has only spent £975? I use that term only quite loosely. Well, if you look back at the trial, bearing in mind that this took the best part of 10 months, you also had everything which took place, the man hours that went into this operation and this investigation and the trial and preparing for the trial, all the way from November 2020 when Lucy Letby was arrested and charged up until when this trial started, until its eventual conclusion. You have all of this money to account for from the prosecution, and in the main part is that the prosecution had expert witnesses. They had medical expert witnesses and the defence had a plumber. Now again, I don't have any way of verifying this, as clearly all of the stuff concerning Lucy Letby's defence is kept behind closed doors. But I have heard it would have most likely have been a strategic choice by Benjamin Myers, Lucy Letby's defence barrister, in order not to call expert witnesses. Now, it could be because maybe these witnesses didn't qualify and they weren't allowed to give evidence in court for whatever reason. But it could also have been a strategic choice by Benjamin Myers himself. So again, the argument of, well, Lucy Letby didn't have a good defence or Lucy Letby didn't have the funding, that simply isn't true. But again, I will say the most important thing from my perspective is that regardless of what someone has or hasn't done, the most important thing from my perspective is that a fair trial is conducted. So what I'm going to do for you now is narrate a very short piece that I found online regarding what Lucy Letby would have been entitled to financially via the Legal Aid Authority, or the LAA, and also someone's insight into why Lucy Letby had no defence experts in court. I need to frame this by highlighting that this is an exceptional case in terms of technical evidence, charges, amount of charges, circumstances, length of the trial, media attention, etc. What's true for this case, quite frankly, is not true for the vast majority of cases. Many of those accused of crimes have bankrupted themselves trying to prove their innocence. However, given the exceptional nature of this case, I would say it would be very hard to make the argument that the defence didn't call experts due to lack of funding alone. Firstly, because the Legal Aid Authority would have offered Lucy Letby funding to match the prosecution funding for her legal and court fees. Lucy Letby meets the merit-based criteria to access the basic funding, and she also, due to the exceptional nature of the case, has access to the additional funds as well. The CPS and LAA are both funded by the government. If Lucy Letby wasn't offered that same level of funding, it would constitute grounds for appeal, as she would be at a disadvantage. The LAA/government are the only loser monetarily if Lucy Letby appeals on this basis. In regards to the expert witnesses specifically, like I mentioned, the LAA has a different funding scheme to fund expert witnesses. They have regulations that set out what they will pay for different types of experts. For example, currently the LAA will currently fund the non-London hourly rate, unless stated to be a fixed fee, for a neonatologist up to £124. However, they will pay higher than those stated in the regulations if the defendant can demonstrate exceptional circumstances. Exceptional circumstances are where the expert's evidence is key to the client's case, and either A, the complexity of the material is such that an expert with a high level of seniority is required, or B, the material is of such a specialised and unusual nature that only a few experts are available to provide the necessary evidence. Based on this, it would be highly unlikely that Lucy Letby would not be able to afford to instruct and retain expert witnesses for her defence. She meets all the exceptional circumstances requirements to access higher levels of funding provided by the LAA. Her lack of defence witnesses was most likely a strategic decision by her defence. Remember, expert witnesses have an overriding duty to the court, but they also don't have the same disclosure obligations of experts called by the prosecution. Or they didn't pass the screening process or disqualified themselves from being admissible or challenged by the prosecution. Okay, now as a side note to this, we do know that the defence at some point in time had a number of medical experts because they attended a pre-trial conference. However, these experts didn't make it to court. Now interestingly here, someone has made a comment on this and he or she states the following. We know that some experts made it to the pre-trial conference, so likely had completed a written report at that point. If the pre-trial conference was the turning point and the intention before that was to call the experts to give testimony, then that could indicate either a change of opinion or concerns about cross-examination. We'll likely never know, unfortunately. So again here, we are going into the realm of speculation here, but it's as to why Lucy Letby didn't call any medical experts, why they didn't actually physically appear in court. Just remember, Lucy Letby's only witness was a plumber. Now, from my perspective, and again, this is just pure speculation on my behalf this time, I would say that the reason that Lucy Letby didn't have any medical experts to testify for her in court or to give evidence in court would be because maybe some of their information or some of their evidence actually agreed alongside the prosecution medical experts. Is that a possibility? Was there a conflict of interest here possibly? Maybe they agreed in some areas but not in all areas, and the defence for Lucy Letby thought, hang on a minute, we're probably best not bring these people into court, otherwise they're not going to stand up to the cross-examination by the prosecution. Again, that's just my own opinion. As always, many thanks for joining me for this video. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe down below for future content regarding this case. And very shortly you'll be able to see the Lucy Letby playlist, which has all of the videos that I've created regarding the trial and the case of Lucy Letby, all in one convenient folder. Many thanks for joining me for this video. I look forward to seeing you all again for the next one. Take care. Cheers.